Riddler's latest. It's all about the Waynes. If we don't stand up, no one will.
You got a lot of cats.
I have a thing about strays.
You guys have the greatest chemistry. I wanted to ask you about the first scene in the film where you both are alone. Zoe, I think you said it was the first scene that you guys shot together. And it was just so hot, for lack of a better word. I couldn't figure out another word to say. What conversations were the both of you having on set while you were shooting that to build that chemistry? Because it's so visceral.
Well, the scene, you mean the scene in my apartment?
I think it was in the mansion, actually.
Okay, yeah. That's that was the first scene that we shot.
You like a little bit of fighting in your hotness.
yeah. We get it. We see you. No, I think it was a great place to start because it was so physical and we were so focused on the choreography and stuff, and so it was it was intense, and it's always a wonderful challenge to have to express things without words.
Yeah. Zoe's also deceptively strong for being such a tiny person as well. I'm trying to do this like sultry scene where it's like you're succumbing to his power. It's very, very difficult.
I was like, get off me. He was like,
just act a little bit, please.
I'm small, but I'm scrappy.
I love it. Were there different conversations going on set that the two of you were having during that sort of dance?
No, honestly, it was like this. This is crazy, right?
Just consistent.
Yeah. Batman, it's nuts.
And also kind of taking off the cowl, having to be like, Zoe's spending a lot of time saying, can you please stop sweating?
Yeah, a lot of sweat on my face from Rob's face.
Rob, I also noticed watching it that this is just the most brooding Batman that I think we've seen. I felt that you played him so well. He was so intense and intimidating. I was wondering, what direction did Matt give you on set? And did you have a conversation with him regarding that just made it click as far as like intensity goes?
I think it was just from the script, the traditionally that Bruce Wayne's supposed to be a kind of society playboy, and there's a kind of playfulness to him. And as soon as you took that out, just the actions of becoming Batman, it's a very disturbed thing to do. And I think the script and Matt's direction really allowed me to kind of play him as damaged as possible, and he also thinks he has the weight of the world on his shoulders. He thinks it's his sole responsibility to fix this city, and even though no one's asked him to, he thinks he's just decided, and it's pretty stressful.
Did he say anything to you on set that you were like, oh, this is like how intense I should be right now in this moment?
I really like the way Matt directs in a kind of super minutiae, and like there's a lot of takes, but once you get onto his rhythm, you can kind of feel, because I'm kind of quite intuitive about what I'm doing. I mean, I'm always just, it's a roll of the dice, like every take. I don't really have that much control over it. But then Matt would be, when you felt it, Matt always felt it. And so it's kind of, it was a kind of unspoken language that we developed quite quickly.
Zoe, because I know a lot of previous Catwomen were so supportive when you got the role. And I was wondering, did any of them reach out to you? And if so, like, what did they say?
Not personally, but there were some wonderful and sweet messages, through interviews and online of, just welcoming me and embracing me. And, I saw Michelle in person soon after I got cast, and she just smiled and said, "You're going to be great." I was like,
good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, seriously. She was like, no, they've all been so encouraging.
What's black and blue and dead all over?
This is the most stunning Batman film I've ever seen. There were so many iconic images: Batman, the upside down walking shot, the flare, the gunfight, the strobe lights. It was just, I literally wrote down, do you know when you're creating an iconic image, and when does it come to you in the creative process?
I start at the script stage trying to write in shots because I'm trying to figure out how to make the movie. I mean, when I'm sort of writing, I consider the process like to be in the dark room, sort of on hands and knees, looking for things that you grab onto that suddenly resonate, and you start putting them together until the story forms. And so I start by trying to write the shots. Then when we're making the movie, as we're prepping, I kind of lay out the shots. We did this movie, I did it in VR. So I was able to go into the sets before we ever shot and made all of these shots that you're seeing, the shots you're talking about in VR, so that we could look, because so much of the stuff when you're doing a Batmobile chase, that's a very highly technical, crazy act. And so to go in there, so like the shot, that upside down shot was a shot that I found in VR, and I was like, oh, that would be really cool. And all of the shots are almost always guided by this idea of subjectivity, of putting you into a character's point of view. So that, that upside down shot is upside down because Penguin's looking at this kind of crazy mythic figure that, to me, when I was writing, I always imagined that being almost like Apocalypse Now, where Kurtz is kind of walking and he's carrying like Chef's head, and he sort of puts it into Martin Sheen's lap. And when he does that, you're kind of like, oh my God, he's just this very visceral, sort of iconic and unsettling mythic figure. And that's really what I really wanted, was Batman to seem mythic. And so, yeah, I mean, when you're shooting, I was going, oh, that's a cool shot. I hope people connect to it. What's really fun is when these trailers are coming out, when people are seeing the movie and they connect to them the way that you did, that's really satisfying, because we were trying to craft these things, but you never know. Are people going to connect to it the way we're intending? And it seems like you did. So that's very cool.
Matt, so many people are going to connect to this. I am so proud of you. VR, I have a million follow-up questions. I can't.
Oh yeah, that was a really cool, that process, it was really unique on this one. James Chinland designed the sets in VR, and he could walk me through them before they were ever built. And we could go and act out the scenes, and we could say, oh, you know what? Actually, I think you need to move the stairway because there needs to be an entrance here because he's going to do this. And he could do all those things. And then I realized, wait a minute, why can't I take, so Greg and I, Greg had researched and done all these incredible lenses that he wanted us to use. And we took those lenses and we put them into VR so I could throw on the lenses. We had this lens that we called the Crazy 88 because it was a really weird lens that had these beautiful qualities. I could throw on the 88 and say, what would that look like here? And find shots. And so it was a brave new world. And that technology is going to be available for film. Like, this idea that you could make and plan your movie in VR is totally something that you could do even on a small budget now, because you could design the set in a very simple way and then go in and set the lenses and sort of move figures around. And that's what we did. So I found it really exciting. I feel like that's the brave new world of movie planning, is to be able to be in your spaces in some way. And because for me, I'm very tactile. I can't, normally when I'm looking for a shot, I need to be in a location and stand there and kind of go like, wait, take a step to your left here. Oh, that's good. And you come up with some of them on the page, but being on the set is important. So to be able to be in VR before the sets are ever built, that's incredible.
Police! Hands up! Stay still! Get out of here!
Paul, I was thinking about how, as Batman fans, when we think of laughing, we think of the Joker's laugh. But I was curious as to how you crafted the Riddler's laugh and his mannerisms.
Yeah, so the expectation on something like that is such a curse that you just have to kind of, push out the door, and it sometimes takes a while, right? Because, or you just gotta face it head on. Matt's version of the Riddler, at first, I was afraid there wouldn't be any laughs. The guy is so damaged and his anger is coming from a place of such pain. But then I found, okay, that's his past, and this mask actually allows him to access his power. So any of those choices really came from who he was and who he couldn't be to who he now can be, and just letting that come out through the mask.
Wow. Did you have to practice like laughing in different ways, or?
I probably did some embarrassing things and, did what I have to do. But that's all like super in private because it's such a strange job and process. And then you try to cultivate a reality, frankly, where hopefully what's scary about it ultimately is how real it is. That's what I'm aspiring to.
Well, you landed there. Jeffrey, I was so moved by your performance of Jim Gordon because I felt like so viscerally you could feel how much he believes in Batman. I truly felt it. I was curious, did you and Rob come up with an origin story before filming? Because I was wondering, why does he trust Batman so much?
We did talk among ourselves, Matt and Rob and I, about how they've come together. And it's year 2, as you know. there's so much decay within Gotham that I think it's really born out of almost a desperation. The thing that I kept coming back to with Gordon was the sense of being overwhelmed, the sense of being overwhelmed by, the individual circumstances of this series of crimes, but also overwhelmed by the disintegration of this society around him. And so his relationship with the Batman is almost like, on an island reaching out for a life-saving vessel to rescue him. And I think for the Batman, there's a similar isolation, but there's something that he sees in Gordon that he doesn't see elsewhere. Certainly not within the Gotham Police Department. And so it's a marriage born of necessity. And I think Gordon is at the point where he's just willing to take the leap. And I think the more that Batman satisfies that leap of faith that Gordon places in him, the closer he becomes to him, because he becomes a kind of caretaker for Batman, certainly within the community of those in the police department who see him as an enemy.
I got you! I got you!
You killed this. And last time I spoke to you, I asked you about Penguin's suit, but now I wanted to ask you about Penguin's voice now having seen the film, because so much of his personality is in his voice and it's so different than your own voice. So I was wondering, what were you listening to like help you find this guy?
Oh, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I have a wonderful dialect coach that I've worked with now for 8 or 10 years. I've been really lucky enough to work with a few fantastic dialect coaches, but Jessica Drake is the woman that I've done the last 10 jobs with or so. And she and I sat in a room and listened to audios, listened to tapes, thought about characters and films we've seen that might have a kind of an energetic, not just a dialectic quality, but an energetic quality, a tonality that we thought Oz might have. So it was fun. It's a journey of exploration, and we just explored and explored. And there was one older gentleman who was the caretaker of a building in New York. He was the building manager, and he's since deceased. And when this audio was made, I think it was the 80s, and I think he was probably in his late 70s when it was made. And he was the one, John, that said gefilte fish, and we used him kind of as a reference. And you're not copying him, but there was a certain quality to him. There was a certain kind of humor that he had, a certain kind of sarcasm that he had. It's all those little things, but I give credit to Jessica Drake, my dialect coach, for whatever that was that you enjoyed.
Wow. And shout out to that man. That's amazing. And you nailed that nuance. I loved it. So much fun to watch. You too, John. I mean, for me, Carmine is such a legacy character, and this is the most we've seen of him and the most mobbed up Batman movie I think we've ever seen. So I was wondering, what was your inspiration in terms of coloring him? Like, what comics did you read, or did you go back to mob movies?
No, I went to the Frank Miller comic. Matt used that as a reference, Year One, The Last Halloween, and that was obviously influenced by The Godfather and the book, and the Godfather book was influenced by a lot of real life figures. And so I looked at some of them, and how they looked and the glasses that they wore. They were always kind of hiding their eyes. But, there were people who were there a long time and then actually became legit, and other ones who didn't, but who had their hands in everything and lived a really subterranean existence, not flashy at all. They were there a long, long time. Their sort of predatory behavior, coming in and finding people's vulnerabilities and taking advantage, saying they're going to help them, and then they own you. So I thought of sort of him almost as a politician in some ways, or a strong man in some ways. There's the world of everything he's done, but he presents himself as a very quiet and simple man, but those are the people you have to be really careful of sometimes,
Yeah,
So
I
that
love
was the
that
hard-
word
yeah.
subterranean.
Yeah, he's a subterranean creature. Yes, he's certainly parasitic, in certain ways. But he sees the vulnerability, like in Bruce, for example. It's two sides of the coin. And Matt seemed to be interested in that, and it was a lot of fun to kind of play around with.
You can tell that both of you guys are having fun. I can't wait for the world to see both of you in this film. Colin, what are you excited to further explore with Penguin in your spin-off series? Because I know people are so stoked for that.
Just his ambition and his vulnerability, his humor. I mean, it was just the tip of the iceberg in this film for me, but there were little moments in the scripts that Matt wrote in relation to Oz, little bits of humor and awkwardness as well, and his origin, why he is the man he is and all that stuff. If we get 6 or 8 hours to do it, I just think the character could be endlessly fun and fascinating and brutal. And I hear that we're going to be allowed kind of do an R-rated version perhaps, which would be nice to explore the violence that could permit perhaps, and the darkness that could allow us to explore. So all those things, Naz.